Nobody. If the banks can now prognosticate that we're heading to 2,000 gold, the question is less now if it will happen. It's just a case of when it will happen. When it will happen. Because we generally go through these great big generational cycles. Generational cycles. So today the Dow is 7359 and gold is 950. I took those figures yesterday, which is a ratio of 7.7 ounces. If you go back to 1920, if you go back to the 1970s, you go back to this time here, there is a time in which the share markets literally absolutely explode, and it will typically cost you 40 ounces of this to buy just one of the to buy the Dow. In other words, if you wanted a share in the top 30 companies in America, one share in each one, and added them all together, it would cost you, last year it would have cost you $14,000 to have a share in DuPont and a share in, Microsoft and a share in Google or whatever. All the I don't only look at the list every once in a while. What are the 30 companies that make up the Dow? But it would have cost you $14,000, which at the time would have required 40 of those to buy one of those. Now it's down to 7.5. But every major generational cycle, you end up having 1 ounce of gold able to buy the entire share market. And then it goes back up to this massive sum. So the smart money goes and buys lots of gold, and then when it's down at the bottom, it sells the gold. In other words, what is the Dow going to be? The Dow is 7359. If you think gold is topping at 7359, it's probably a good idea to sell the gold and buy the Dow. But if you think the Dow is going down to 3,500, well, wait till the gold is 3,500. But at some point you will get a 1-for-1 swap, and then you go and swap and go straight back in. I'm not trying to be too, I hope I'm not losing people trying to be too technical, but I'm just illustrating that gold is valuable and it is seasonal. Everything has a season, everything has a time. It's dark now, tomorrow it'll be light. In the Northern Hemisphere they're going into summer, we're going into winter. Everything goes around, and it is no different in these great. In fact, you can see how the waves operate, even rhythmically, in history. So you've just got to make a decision. If you're in gold, at some point you're going to want to get out and swap your gold for some shares, because then you're at the bottom in the turn. And so wise investors recognise this, institutions recognise this, smart money recognises this. Generally the crowd are the last to recognise it. They're the ones queuing up, as they were back in 1980, around the side of these bullion banks to buy their coins at 4 a.m. in the morning, because there was just a shortage, which is the same thing we're seeing now around the world. Very hard to buy gold physically, getting harder and harder. And don't be fooled, this paper price you see back there on that screen, that is just a paper price, $938.50 right now, $938. So if you were to buy a real ounce of gold, that gold, a 1 ounce, will cost you another 7.5%. If it was a half ounce, it would cost you 15% more. If it was a quarter ounce, it would cost you 28%. If it was a 1/10 ounce, it would cost you 56%, which we will talk about when we get to the JWS side. The smaller you go, like most things in life, the more you pay for it. The bigger you buy, the more you buy, the better rate you get. But don't be fooled. When you see a price across the TV screen, that is just the paper price in fairyland. In the real world, you have to pay a lot more for your gold, a lot more for your gold. The problem around the world is right now, because the price of gold has been so depressed, it is getting harder and harder to actually buy it. And at different times, I called NZ Mint, our largest one. This is an NZ Mint coin, Kiwi on the picture, in November, and they said no gold till February. What? You're a mint? 3 months before you're going to have any gold? You're kidding. I said, if you were a baker shop and you said there's no bread, it's ridiculous. And yet really the mainstream media haven't quite picked up on that. By the time the mainstream media pick up on it, the smart money's already bought their gold. They've got their gold. They're not on some waiting list for 3 months waiting for the next lot to come. They've already got it. And probably one of the most unique things about Anglo and JWS, whether you hold it off in Switzerland and the Anglo accounts, or whether you want to take delivery of little coins, the reality is that we have long-standing relationships with one of the world's foremost mints, and so we have a very secure, regular supply of gold that can be shipped to your door every month. So look, just coming back, as I said, am I losing people, or is it getting boring, or should I go faster? It's a bit hard to tell. You're being very polite. So gold is sailing away in all currencies. You know, we've watched our currency go up, right all the way up to 80, and then we watched it go all the way down. And yet gold just goes. It doesn't really matter. I chatted to you briefly before, John. You know, you're busy working out, you know, you've got in here, the currency was this at that time. Am I ahead? You almost got to just forget about it. Because the long-term trend in all currencies all over the world is that gold is simply sailing away no matter what currency you hold. And right now, in the world, every country is competitively debasing their own currency in order to get a competitive advantage over someone else. And when I say debase, they're printing money. They're just selling money. In the last week, and you can see it back there on the trading screen. I could go back there right now. In fact, I probably shouldn't, because I don't want to really bore people too much. But if I was to go, whoa, look at that, gee. So if I had gone long on the Kiwi dollar, it would have been just wonderful. But I wasn't to know that they were just suddenly going to announce in America, oh, we've just decided to print $300 billion. And, you know, we've just printed it off. And so what happens to foreigners who are buying their dollars? They just say, well, your money's not worth as much anymore. Your money's not worth as much. And every country is adding to their monies. No, New Zealand is no different, adding to their money supply at the rate of 16% a year, which has got nothing to do with any real GDP or anything we're doing. Just some economists putting the foot down on the accelerator and giving it a bit of herb. And so, in essence, it doesn't matter what currency, gold is simply leaving everything for dead. Franklin Sanders, good Christian bloke, been in the industry for, I don't know, 50 years. And he talks about in history, because he remembers it well, back in 73, 7 years before the last bull market ended in 1980, I showed you that spike. Nobody would have thought gold would climb from $69 to $850 7 years later, a 12.66 increase. You know, I was being conservative, showing you those 7.5 time, you know, the S&P. From here, this bull market will probably run another 7 years, because you've got to remember we've already been in it for 7 years. It bottomed out back in 2000 at $250. Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister of England, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer, guess what he did with all of England's gold, or a good chunk of it? He sold it. What a smart move that was, Gordon. They call it Brown's blunder, although he's very defensive about it and still stands by it as a good move today. Based on the price, I'm not so sure about that, Gordon. But anyway, when we look at it from here, this bull market will probably run another 7 years to 2015. So we possibly are 7 years into something that will probably be at least 18 years. At least 18 years. So in terms of where we are in history, we are only just getting started. If the gold price merely matched its performance in the last bull market, it would climb to $11,000. So there's one view or estimate from a very experienced man in the industry. He says he knows that sounds ridiculous, but so did 850 gold back in 1973. People just laughed at you. Look, one of my closest friends, an esteemed banker, works in one of the very large banks. He's actually been made redundant, like so many banking people around the world now. I sent him an article. It was a bit of a provocative article, I must admit, about the demise of the US dollar, which is the world's reserve currency. All oil, gold, silver, coffee, soybeans, everything is priced in US dollars and traded on these big commodity exchanges. I said to him, gold is going to 2,000. He sent back a reply, cuckoo. And I said, buddy, when the price gets to $2,000, I'm going to buy a cuckoo clock and I'm going to engrave your name on the forehead of that clock, so every time it pops out I can remember your cuckoo. Well, you see, at the time, property market was exploding. I was selling my home. He told me, you're an idiot for selling it. He doesn't feel that way anymore. Well, it's not surprising. He said and acknowledged that there's a possibility, because I said, look, he said to me, Duncan, I'll buy you that cuckoo clock. He's acknowledging now he probably will have to buy that clock. He will clock. It's no longer if or you're a cuckoo, it's just when. When.